Around this time of the year, a lot of American people like you and me suddenly stumble upon a little-known tradition north of the border: Canadian Thanksgiving. Now, both Canada and the US like to argue over who celebrated the first harvest festival, but really, their versions of the holiday aren't all that different. So here's where the confusion comes in. Canadians celebrate Thanksgiving about 6 weeks earlier than Americans do, and it happens to fall on the same day as America's Columbus Day. That alone throws people off. But the real reason many Americans don't think of it as a thing is because they feel Thanksgiving is their holiday, something born out of a specific historical moment on American soil. After all, we've all heard the classic story, the one about the Pilgrims and the Wampanoag people sharing that big first harvest feast at Plymouth Rock in 1621. It's one of those stories taught early and often repeated, almost like national folklore. Now, to be fair, some Canadians have pushed back on the idea that their Thanksgiving is just a knockoff version. A few point to earlier celebrations, like when Martin Frobisher and his crew held a small meal of thanks way back in 1578. But since that meal involved tinned beef and mushy peas, let's just say it doesn't exactly scream Thanksgiving feast. A more fitting example might be the one from 1606, when Samuel de Champlain hosted a big dinner in Port Royal. Europeans and indigenous peoples came together to share food and good cheer. It was part of what they called the Order of Good Cheer, basically a series of feasts meant to keep everyone healthy and happy through the brutal winter months. It's likely that the only reason any of those early settlers survived at all was because of the Micmac people. They were the ones who taught the newcomers how to ice fish and showed them a special berry packed with vitamin C, which helped prevent scurvy. Without that help, those colonists probably wouldn't have made it through the winter. In return, the French invited some Micmac men to their big celebration on November 14th. It wasn't just about food and drink, there were musket firing displays and even a bit of theater. In fact, it was the first European play ever performed in North America. The story was pretty simple. The god of the sea congratulates the explorers for their impressive sailing, and then the indigenous characters swear loyalty to the newcomers, recognizing European rule. Yeah, that part didn't age well. Things went downhill fast after that. There were smallpox outbreaks, forced conversions to Christianity, broken treaties, and eventually open war over Halifax land that the Micmac never actually gave up. Governor Edward Cornwallis's response? He offered bounties for Micmac scalps. That's why his statue in Halifax, put up in 1931, was covered up and later taken down after calls for its removal. So it's kind of strange that everyone would want that story to be the foundation of a national holiday, especially since today's version of Canadian Thanksgiving didn't grow out of that event at all. In fact, Thanksgiving, as we know it, didn't really catch on in Canada until the 19th century, around the same time it became a big deal in the US. For about 250 years after the first Thanksgiving at Plymouth Rock, which many now view as a tragic turning point that led to disease and colonization, the holiday was barely even a thing. It was just a loose regional tradition, celebrated on random dates chosen by local officials, mostly in New England. Thanksgiving might never have become the huge national tradition we know today if it weren't for one woman, Sarah Josepha Hale. She was the editor of Godey Lady's Book, one of the most popular women's magazines of the 1800s. Hale was a big deal. Her magazine promoted all sorts of things we now take for granted, like white wedding dresses, Christmas trees, and even the idea that Thanksgiving should be a national holiday celebrated on the same day across the country. Her goal was for everyone to pause, give thanks, and pray together as one nation. In her 1827 novel, Northwood, one of her characters actually sums up her vision perfectly. He says, "We want Thanksgiving as a symbol of our Republican institutions, a reminder that our blessings come from God." Basically, Hale saw Thanksgiving as a moral glue, something to unite a divided country. Fast forward to the Civil War. By then, Abraham Lincoln and his Secretary of State, William H. Seward, finally gave in to her campaign. They declared a national day of Thanksgiving, hoping it would help heal the nation and remind people of shared values. Over time, the Plymouth Rock story, the one about hard rock, community, and manifest destiny, got woven into the holiday, giving it that patriotic, nation-building flavor we all recognize. Meanwhile, up in what was then Upper Canada, politicians and businessmen were trying to do something similar. They wanted to build a sense of national identity to support Confederation, which, at its core, was really just a free trade pact. But to make it stick, they needed a unifying story. The idea that took hold was of a white Protestant nation, one that pushed aside indigenous peoples and non-European immigrants. In the 1860s, a group called Canada First was formed to promote exactly that. They wanted cultural traditions like Thanksgiving to reinforce their vision, celebrating the farm, the family, and religious devotion as the heart of Canadian life. By 1865, even newspapers like the Globe and Mail were calling for nationwide Thanksgiving services to thank divine providence for good harvests and economic recovery. Their argument: if the whole country prayed together, it would feel more united because, as they put it, the country that prays together stays together. Historian Peter Stevens explains how, back in Ontario, Thanksgiving sermons often carried a certain moral pride. The date of the holiday bounced around for a while until people eventually decided that Thanksgiving should include outdoor sports, and since November was too cold, they moved it earlier. And beyond the timing, the tone of those sermons was striking. Many church leaders in Ontario used Thanksgiving to celebrate what they saw as Canada's moral superiority over the United States. They claimed that Canada had never had slavery and argued that made Canada the real chosen land. They said the US had been punished for its own sins through the Civil War. But with great blessings came great responsibilities, and in 1888, a preacher named Reverend Charles Bruce Plibato in Winnipeg gave a Thanksgiving sermon that made that very clear. Referring to the Northwest Rebellion and the execution of Louis Riel, he thanked God for victory but went on to say that Canada's peace and prosperity depended on Christianizing and civilizing the Indians. Not everyone agreed with this mindset, though. In 1890, the Globe and Mail ran a piece mourning the decline of the Haudenosaunee, ancient 7-day rituals of gratitude that involved prayer, visiting, feasting, and dancing. The article said these celebrations were fading because more and more Christianized Indians were abandoning what missionaries called pagan customs. Those feasts had been around since the formation of the Haudenosaunee Federation long before any European explorer set foot in the Americas. And that's really the heart of it. The whole debate about who invented Thanksgiving misses the point. Indigenous peoples were holding harvest celebrations and ceremonies of gratitude long before Europeans ever arrived. The details might have differed from region to region, but the idea of giving thanks for the land and its bounties was already deeply woven into life here. Now, I know this might sound like an argument for canceling Thanksgiving altogether. After all, the holiday's roots are tangled up in cultural appropriation and nationalism, often used to push ideas of racial and cultural superiority. But here's the flip side, and maybe the hopeful part. Thanksgiving, like most holidays, is an invented tradition. It's changed meanings over time, molded to fit whatever story people wanted to tell about themselves, and that means it can change again. The United States turned Thanksgiving into a founding myth, part of its nation-building story. It's become so dominant that it's almost eclipsed Canada's version entirely. After all, if Thanksgiving has always been about gratitude and reflection, maybe now it's time to decide what and who we're truly giving thanks for.